Hog 2.6 is the most skilled deck type in Clash Royale history. Its many variations are some of the most popular in the game. The Hog 2.6 deck has been around since the beginning of time. This deck is the reason Therapy exists. Hog 2.6 is one of the decks that all Clash Royale players have an opinion on. On one side, we have people who say this deck requires no skill, and the ones who use it have no life, no friends, and don't know what grass is. On the other side, we have people saying Hog 2.6 is a high skill deck, and those who oppose it are brain dead and don't understand card interactions. Today, we'll be taking a look at the history of the most infamous deck in Clash Royale history. Variants of the Hog 2.6 deck have been around since the early Clash Royale days. Decks such as the Trifecta, which included the Hogrider, Valkyrie, and Musketeer, paved the way for the Hog 2.6 deck to eventually rise to power. At launch, only 5 of the 8 cards needed for the Hog 2.6 deck were in the game, but by the end of the year, the pieces of the puzzle had fell into place, and the 3 remaining cards needed for Hog 2.6 were added to the game. July started with a huge update which introduced 2 of the 3 needed cards. One of these cards was the Ice Spirit, a 1 elixir common card. The Ice Spirit on impact froze enemy troops for 1.3 seconds. This may not sound like a lot, but in a game where every second matters, this often is just enough time for troops like Hogrider to get an extra hit on the crown tower. The next card released was the Log, a 2 elixir legendary. This card was able to push back any ground troop in its path. The Log was used as a cheap, reliable alternative to arrows or zap, being able to fully counter cards such as Goblin Barrel. However, when the Log was first introduced to the game, it was weak, so arrows and zap were still highly favored for Hog decks at the time. On October 14th, 2016, an update came to Clash Royale which would go on to change the game forever. The Ice Golem was released, which meant that the final card needed for Hog 2.6 was now in the game. The Ice Golem was a cheap mini tank which cost 2 elixir and was often used in place of the Valkyrie or the Knight. When paired with cards like Hogrider, it would allow the troop to reach the crown tower with ease. Upon death, the Ice Golem is even able to completely counter cards such as skeletons or bats due to its area freeze damage. These 3 new cards paired very well with the Hog 2.6 playstyle. The deck consisting of skeletons, cannon, Hogrider, fireball, Ice Spirit, Ice Golem, Musketeer, and Log is the OG Hog 2.6 deck and would go down as one of the most popular the game has ever seen. Over time, popular decks tend to fall in popularity due to balance changes. Decks such as Double Prince and P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam, which were dominant in their times, are hardly seen in the game today. Supercell nerfs or buffs cards to allow new styles of play to arise, but Hog 2.6 is one of the only ones to stand the test of time. Over time, as the game's meta and card balance shifted, players would make minor adaptations to the Hog 2.6 deck, which allowed it to thrive in any meta. Hogrider, despite players constantly demanding it to be nerfed because it's too OP, has been left relatively untouched by Supercell. Although the Hogrider has received slight nerfs, not much has changed. This is because the Hogrider is only dominant in this one specific playstyle. Despite this, Hogrider is still seen in 26.2% of ladder decks and about 14% of tournament decks in Clash Royale, and to this day remains one of the most hated cards in the game. When it comes to the Hog 2.6 deck, spells play a huge role in its success. Before the Log came out, Zap was used as the primary cheap spell of the deck. In 2017, the Zap would receive a couple of nerfs, most importantly on January 23rd, when the Zap's damage was decreased by 6%, making it no longer able to counter equally leveled goblins. Zap was still used in Hog decks at the time, but an update soon after would change this. February 24th, 2017, the Goblin Gang was introduced, and shortly after, the log bait deck would take over the meta. This is the moment that solidified the log takeover of Hog 2.6, as log was the best option to counter the cards that made up log bait. On top of that, the log did more crown tower damage than zap, thus making the log the go-to option since this playstyle relies heavily on chipping away at the enemy's crown tower throughout the match. In December of this same year, spells received a crown tower damage reduction going from 40% to 35%, making the spell cycle aspect of the deck less reliable. The rest of the cards that make up Hog 2.6 didn't really receive much change over time. The most notable change would be to the skeletons going from 4 units to 3 back in June of 2016. Even with this nerf, skeletons would remain a powerful card and an essential piece to Hog 2.6. Even with many balance changes over the years, Hog 2.6 remains a very popular deck in Clash Royale today. Hog 2.6 is a deck that will be in the history books at school in about 10 years. The fear and stress this deck created in its prime is something we will never see again. The way Hog 2.6 was able to make use of cards that all of us saw as no value is truly incredible. Cards like Skeletons and Ice Golem were able to make game-changing plays pretty much every battle. And Hogrider would get a hit on the crown tower every time. That's why Hog 2.6 will go down as the most infamous deck in Clash Royale history. Subscribe!